Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
1 in 5 women is sexually assaulted in college, according to a new report released today by a White House task force. UC Davis student Sarah Yang was part of that task force and met with Vice President Biden. One of her recommendations is having someone on campus that survivors can talk to.
A lot of times there are some issues with timing and a lot of legal barriers that you yourself as a student don't have any idea about. So it's very, very important that I have someone who can advise me on that and kind of lead me through the process.
The task force wants college campuses to provide students with roadmaps for filing a complaint and do a better job of reporting sexual assaults. It's something UC President Janet Napolitano addressed today in Sacramento.
I'm pleased to see that all the major categories are things that already have been in the works at our university.
All right, folks, that report actually is the tail end of a report that started with the reporter at KCRA in Sacramento talking about 2 sexual assaults in the traditional sense, where a stranger attacked women on a trail, where, you know, when they now have his picture up, he's wanted, they're looking for him. That's what most people think of as a sexual assault. When the administration says that 1 in 5 women on college campuses are sexually assaulted, I can't even begin to think of what that number is. Joining us now is the great Heather McDonald, fellow at the Manhattan Institute, contributor to City Journal, who penned a great piece for National Review Online about this Obama administration directive. Naming, first of all, welcome back. Always good to see you. Naming, what, 55 universities, including the Ivy League schools, as perpetrators, if you will, of not protecting women from sexual assaults. What is this all about?
It's about the feminist takeover of the federal government is what it's about. And it's the result of 3 decades worth of propaganda that women are constantly living in an unsafe environment in society. You know, your contrast, Steve, with the actual rape cases in Sacramento is very telling, because in that instance, the schools did what they ought to have done, which is warn women to stay away from areas at night, be careful, protect yourself. When it comes to so-called the rape issues that the Obama administration is speaking of, nobody ever says that. It would be very easy to stop this so-called campus rape epidemic overnight by a few simple words of advice to women, which is don't drink yourself blotto, don't get into a bed with a guy you don't know, act responsibly, go home at night to your own bed. Nobody sends that message because they want to preserve the principle of male fault, and they understand that what's going on campuses, which is drunken hookups, is much more complicated and ambiguous than an actual rape.
Well, I want to take the first thing you said, and that's the 30 years of feminist propaganda. And Christina Hoff Sommers, the great Christina Hoff Sommers, who's written so many books, Who Stole Feminism comes to mind, where she talked about this phony March of Dimes study that some feminist groups sent out to all the media networks, saying that more women lose their pregnancies because their boyfriends kick them or punch them when they're pregnant, and that was reported. And the March of Dimes said, "What are you talking about? We never did that study." I think it was Bob Costas or NBC on a Super Bowl Sunday said, "Now men, Super Bowl Sunday, more men beat their wives and their girlfriends than any other day. You better behave now." And that was a fallacy. Now, again, if a woman is attacked, sexually assaulted, certainly. I mean, I hope they find the guy and put him in jail for the rest of, as long as is possible. But if the question becomes, what is a sexual assault? When Obama himself said 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted on college campuses, I mean, how many millions of women are we talking about then?
Right. I mean, that's a crime rate that is unknown in human history.
Yeah, you talk about Detroit, for instance.
Detroit, all violent crimes, that's murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, is 2%. The rape rate is 0.05%. So,
and he's talking about 20%.
Right, which is 400 times higher. And yet women are beating down the doors of colleges every year to try and get in, despite a alleged crime rate that has never been seen in human history. What's behind this particular feminist fraud of the 1 in 4, now it's 1 in 5 number, is a polling technique that carefully doesn't listen to women's own analysis of their experiences, which is a feminist no-no. The pollsters cut up the definition of sexual assault into little aggregate parts, and they ask women, have you experienced this and that? But the interesting thing, Steve, is when you actually ask the women whom the pollsters categorize as rape victims, if they have been raped, 73% say, no, I haven't been raped. 42% of those alleged rape victims go on to have sex again with their alleged assailant. This is unthinkable in the case of an actual rape, this situation in Sacramento. If somebody grabs you, comes into your room at night, rapes you at knife point, there is no way that you are having sex again with that male.
Okay, so what is, you talk about what's behind it, you call it a fraud, and you know, again, the crime rate, when you compare it to a horrifically crime-ridden city, I mean, the numbers just don't mesh. But what's behind it? What's the reason? Why the feminist groups? Why is the White House? You say the feminists have infiltrated the administration, etc. What are they trying to do here? Is it to put men or / boys on the defensive, make them keep their hands off, think about having even normal sexual relations? What's the point?
Well, that actually, I would agree with that as an ideal. If this ends up turning boys into sexual prudes, there's no loss to society. You know, somebody has got to take the initiative to return to a more sexually prudent and modest set of relationships. So I frankly don't feel too bad for the guys, but I think what this is about is simply trying to give meaning to the idea that women are always and everywhere victims, and that men are always and everywhere oppressors, which is simply not the case. There is no more free environment for women today than a college campus. They have learning at their fingertips. They have professors wanting them to learn, administrators helping them. The idea, which is what the language of the feminists is, that we need to create so-called safe spaces for women on college campuses, is ludicrous.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear for everybody, I think I can safely speak for Heather in saying that if a man attacks a woman, unwanted sexual advances, anything beyond that, any kind of assault, any kind of real criminal assault is reprehensible, should be reported, should be dealt with. The guy should be put in jail if he's found guilty, the whole thing. We're not defending sexual assault. But when you call anything, as Heather alluded, ran down the possibilities of, you know, of what would fall under sexual assault, and just making up these statistics. I mean, again, what you're doing is, it's like when people cry racism, okay, over every little thing, it demeans and lessens and cheapens real racism. If everything is sexual assault, all of a sudden, to the point where 20% of women are sexually assaulted, which again, that is unfathomable, then it cheapens and it's almost like you're crying wolf for when a woman is really sexually assaulted.
Of course, rape is the second most violent crime that exists. The FBI puts it second after murder. But oddly, the feminists that are pushing this campus rape conceit are not pressing to bring these cases in court, which they should if this really is a crime.
Right.
This is a violent crime. What really is behind this is this drunken hookup culture of binge drinking. The females often drink both before and after and during a party precisely to lower their inhibitions so that they can get involved in these drunken hookups.
The New York Times did didn't they do a story on that about a year ago or so with a woman? And I mean, I'm not putting the blame on women, but it's mutual. But this hookup culture is I never had a hookup culture like that when I was a kid. I mean, it's just casual and like you describe it. And that's, you know, probably accountable for many of these what the feminists call assaults, correct? Right.
And what we're seeing weirdly is the feminist movement is re-importing a Victorian ethic, but sort of one-sidedly,
right,
because
one-sided. Yep.
they want males now to be responsible for females. That both can be drunk out of their minds, but only the male is responsible for what happens. If the female wakes up the next morning and says, "My God, what did I do? You know, what happened there?" she can claim that she's been sexually assaulted by him, even though he doesn't really remember either.
You know, it's just another example of the demonization of boys and men and males, and it continues. And if you want to read a great column, go to National Review Online and read The Obama Administration's Deserving Victims by Heather McDonald, and of course read City Journal, and say hello to everybody at the Manhattan Institute.
Thank you.
Heather McDonald, ladies and gentlemen. All right, when we come back, well, let's see. You know what time of the hour it is. It means it's time for the Gimme 5 segment, and I promise you, you will not want to miss this Gimme 5, because we've got some really good ones today, all 3 hours. You're going to be happy with them. Bill Maher's featured in one, and Hamas Television is featured in another. But this one is going to be great, too. Right here, coming back on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.